Neville Goddard, 1963 lectures. Wonder-working power of attachment. April 23rd, 1963. Tonight's subject is the wonder-working power. I hope I can tell it tonight so simply that no one leaving this room can say I didn't quite understand it. That within the immediate present, you can put it into effect and prove the truth of what I'm talking about from this platform. This wonder-working power is a showing in 4 different levels of vision. Blake made the statement, now I, a fourfold vision see, and a fourfold vision is given to me. 'Tis fourfold in my supreme delight, and threefold in soft Belu's night, and twofold always, may God us keep, from single vision and Newton's sleep. Now here's the perfect description of single vision. Maybe you are familiar with this one little poem, just one verse. A primrose by a river's brim, a yellow primrose was to him, and it was nothing more. He looks at a tree, that's all there is. He looks at a man, it's a man. He looks at a rock, it's nothing more. So, a primrose by a river's brim, a yellow primrose was to him, and it was nothing more. That's single vision. And the whole vast world sees it in that light. But now, we want to bring everyone here into a double vision. We are all familiar with a fireplace. So we look at a fireplace and say something is burning, blank space, and then one day I see it was lit by something similar to itself. A spark lit it, and then it was fed and it blazed up, warming me, radiating this wonderful heat. And then it cooled, and we had the embers and then the ash. Looking at it, you and I would say, well, you know, it reminds me of my life. That's my life. My life is like a fire. It comes in, lit in some strange way, and then it's fed and fed and fed, and it blazes up, and then becomes an ember, and then an ash. And so I have a simile. Then I say my light is a Then I say my life is a fire. Now I have a metaphor. One day I leave out the little is, and I say life and fire are synonyms. I can't see one without seeing the other, without imagining the other. Then I have an image, I have a symbol, and I do it with everything in the world. And I have many images. When everything in the world is to me but a symbol, then I have double vision. Double the vision, my eye can see now that nothing appears as it appears to the world. Everything is different. A man who appears to be a man, so when I talk with him and I get his moods, and while he takes advantage of other men, he's in business. He doesn't pay good wages to anyone who serves him. Then I see that man as I would see any blood-sucking, blood-drinking insect, just a parasite. He may be the head of society. He may be the most powerful person in the world, a dictator, but I see him using men for his own personal gain. And you see him now spiritually, and one sight only sees the garment, and his name, the little tag, it appears, and they bow before him. But you now with double vision, and you see him, but you now with double vision, and you see him as a parasite, just like a flea that lives on the body of the dog or the animal or anything in this world. He's only a flea. You see him as a flea. Although he may have billions of dollars, he may control the armies of the world, but he's only a flea. And that's how God sees him. When you begin your sight that way, all of a sudden you see differently, and he doesn't offend you, you aren't moved by him. You see him just as he really is in the eyes of God. That's the beginning of double vision. Now comes the third vision. The third vision, when these images interplay and they marry and beget other images, that's the threefold vision. Now here's what I want to talk about this night, the threefold vision. Here's a little child. The child is 3. This is a true story. The grandmother is present here tonight. This story was told me before I took the platform. She's now 5.5, but the mother knows this and she's been coming here over the years, so the child's now 5.5. When she was 3, the father and mother had no money. He was working on a job at a small salary, and they dreamed of owning their own house, a wonderful home, but they had no money, and they were in debt. So the little child, while in bed, was told by the grandmother and the mother, close your eyes and see this lovely home. A huge big fireplace right up to the ceiling, glass all around, 2 bedrooms for you, Pammy. Her name was Pamela. I say was now, but it says here her name is Pamela, so we'll go with the present tense. We like the present tense. And then Julie, her sister, who was then only a year old. So you see it clearly now. Go into the bedroom, keep your eyes closed. If you open your eye, it's going to deny what I'm telling you. So keep your eyes closed. Go into the bedroom. And go into the other bedroom. One is yours, and one is Julie's. And a huge fireplace up to the ceiling. In a little while, this firm was absorbed by a larger firm, and all the men were given aptitude tests. He came out with this kind of a test. His came out with this kind of a test. You are a salesman. At first, he refused to accept the thought he could sell. He was going to quit. They said, you may quit, but you can't work for us unless you become a salesman. Lovely displacement aptitude tests. You are a salesman. I am not a number. I'm a free man. Excuse me. They said you may quit, but you can't work for us unless you become a salesman. That is what we see in this test. You must become a salesman. In the immediate present, he was making a fortune, and they bought a home. They bought the home, glass all over, 2 bedrooms, leading off in this enormous fireplace up to the ceiling. Now he's making money. He was never given to spending money and was never considered a generous father or husband, possibly afraid of the future. When it came to Christmas, the mother wondered, how am I going to get $5 out of him to buy toys for my children? So remembering what they did prior to getting this home, she said, Pammy, do you remember what we did with the house? Yes, she remembered the whole thing. Now close your eyes, and there's a huge big playpen in the backyard filled with toys. And you go into the backyard and play. Remain here physically, but now you go right into the backyard. Don't open your eyes because it will then be single vision. Go into the backyard and all these images are playing now. Just before Christmas, she called her mother, who is here this night, and said, I think he's gone mad. You know what he's contemplating? He's contemplating buying a $100 playpen for Pammy and Julie, and undoubtedly he'll fill it with toys. But she said, remember now, 1963 here, we're talking a $100 playpen is a big deal. But she said, I was there Christmas Eve night and Christmas Day when we opened the toys. This enormous playpen, he paid $100 for it, and it was filled with toys. That just warms you up, doesn't it? All of this is possible from any place to any place. But said the grandmother to her daughter, have you forgotten what you did with Pamela only a week or 2 weeks ago? And then she remembered. How could she now criticize the extravagance of her husband, who was always so mean, when she herself had put the child into the state of seeing this wonderful playpen filled with toys? Now that is threefold vision. But what I want to share with you is that the child is only a symbol inside of the mother, also inside of the grandmother. Pammy doing the exercise, going in the closet and shutting the door while the mom is leading her, the child is a symbol in this story, as is the mom and the grandma. There's a lot of symbols in this one very short up to this point story. There's a lot of symbols in there. If you think it's actual fact, then you're missing something that I'm trying to tell you. And maybe he'll get there now too. You take a vision. Everything is a symbol. Take me, I'm a symbol. You're a symbol. And everything's a symbol. And you interplay them to form a certain pattern, which will then give birth to another image. So I bring you before my mind's eye in a certain manner. I bring another party into the same picture. Then I add to these two a conversation between two of them, which conversation would imply that you know I am what I want to be. I bring you, I bring another, and I eavesdrop and I listen. I hear them discuss, and they are discussing my good fortune. I listen until I actually hear what I would hear were it true. Everyone is discussing exactly what I want to hear. For if I heard it, it would imply the fulfillment of my dream. That is, taking now symbols, taking images, and interplaying them. Interplaying them so that I marry them. And as they marry, they beget another image. The images that are bringing me forward in the image that I want to see myself express in this world. That's, threefold vision. Now, fourfold vision. I trust you have it. If you haven't had it, I can't describe the joy of fourfold vision. If I could describe it, it is dreaming, yes, or loving, or imagining, and these are only three forms of the same thing, but dreaming with such intensity that it obliterates the daylight, just as daylight ordinarily obliterates the dream. You're sitting in a chair, and you're loving, you're imagining, you're dreaming, and suddenly, it is no longer something that is unseen by you. For this little child, she saw it in her mind's eye. But not as I'm seeing you now, and you see the speaker. She saw it, kept the physical eyes closed, and moved into the imagined state, and made it real to her. No doubt first person experiencing the toys, the playpen. But fourfold vision, something goes out and suddenly you say to yourself, I'm dreaming. No, I'm not. It's real. I'm not dreaming. Here it is. It's real, just as real as this. The curtain goes up on it, and then what began as a dream, just a daydream, but you did it with intensity, and suddenly the curtain goes up, and you step into the world of your dream. You are awake in what formerly began as a dream. And now, let me tell you my first experience of it. I used the threefold vision unnumbered times to produce results and talk about it. Told all my friends about it, and all these things worked. Threefold vision produces the same results that the little child produced. It never fails. But one night here in Beverly Hills, I suddenly looked up, my eyes were closed, and I was awake. I knew exactly where I was. I was in my home in Beverly Hills on El Camino, and I knew I should see where were my eyes open. I felt my eyes closed. And yet I am seeing more vividly than I'm seeing you now. I should see the familiar objects on the wall. I should see the familiar things on my bureau, for I was lying on my right side. But instead of seeing these, suddenly I am seeing the interior of a fantastic building. Consciousness followed vision. And I stepped into the state that I am seeing. I came back to my bed, and once more I am now in a horizontal position. Then again, I stepped into my vision, and I am now vertical. I'm stepping right into what I see. I did it maybe a dozen times. And then I decided to explore. Regardless of consequences, I'm going to explore. You've really got to have that spirit of attitude in these states, in these dream states, lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, whatever. You've got to have a curious, explorative mindset to just go with it. Don't be in fear. Forget doubt, just go with it. Explore, check things out. What would you do when you went into, what do you do when you go into a brand new store, a big, big store that has all these wonderful things? Like the first time you went into Hobby Lobby. That store is amazing, man. I've only been in there once or twice with my wife, but man, I usually drop her off and I sit out front, but I see the most extremely creative people going in and out of that store, and it blows my mind. I'm like, these are the creatives. But but when you go into Hobby Lobby, it's like, wow, look at this place. It's amazing. If you're of the creative variety, it's an amazing store, but wouldn't you just go crazy in there? There's so much to explore. This is the attitude you want to have in these states, these dream states, these curious, lucid experiences, exploratory, curiosity. I did it maybe a dozen times, and then I decided to explore. Regardless of consequences, I'm going to explore. If it's the very end of my life in this world, I can't stop it. I must explore. Now that is courageous. What he just said right there is very courageous. I am going to explore, even if it means I do not return. This is the idea and attitude you must carry about yourself in this world, period. If you carry this attitude, you know, you're going to change states easier and easier if you just carry this attitude. Let the dead bury the dead. What's behind you? Who cares? We're going to move. And so I stepped into this place with the determination to go on. As I did so, it closed around me. The room that seemed, when I was on the bed, it seemed maybe 30 by 20. It now seemed 10 by 7, I discovered as I examined it. And it's simply a dressing room. I left this room into a huge, big suite, an enormous suite of rooms, unoccupied but prepared for occupancy, but not occupied. It was just so solidly real as this room is. I was to myself just as I am now. Everything I touched was solid. My hands could not go through it. It was solid. I came out of this room into a huge hallway, which led to a huge, big public hallway. When I got there, I saw two ladies coming down the hallway. I knew the whole thing had started, and so I said to them, "Ladies, this is a dream." Well, they were just as startled as you would be if you met me, a total stranger, say at a hotel, the ambassador. You never saw me before, and suddenly you saw a man coming into this place who suddenly talks to you. You don't know him, and he tells you, "Ladies, this is a dream." Wouldn't you be startled? You would say, "Well, the man is insane. Let us get out of this place as fast as we can." That's exactly what they tried to do. They got as far away from me as they could, right next to the wall. But I insisted it's a dream because I remembered exactly what I did. But now I'm fully awake in the dream. My eyes are wide open and I'm awake in my dream. It's funny, when you're talking in a lucid dream experience, when you're talking to somebody, it's so plain and simply obvious, number one, to yourself that you're actually in a dream state and you're actually awake there and you can read there and write there. In one, I had a pencil in my hand even, but when you're talking to your friend or whomever you're in that dream with, it's a complete amazing reaction. I think I might have mentioned the one before. I might as well mention it now. I'm in this lucid dream experience. I have a piece of paper in front of me and I can see some writing on it, kind of like I see writing on anything. And I'm looking right at the right. I'm like, okay, so I'm taking notes here. I got a pencil, an actual pencil. And it's one of those older pieces of paper we had growing up in school where they were very flimsy. They were very weak, kind of like a manila, not manila, but the other kind of very weak paper. Not like a college paper, not like a white piece of paper out of a printer, but that other weaker, maybe cheaper paper, I guess. I'm looking at that paper, and I got my pencil, and I'm talking to my friend who's right here in the dream with me, lucid dream, and I'm telling him, okay, tell me what. I said to him, I'm going to go ahead and prove to you how time works. Of course, I believe there is no time as far as past and future is concerned, that it's only now. But I'm telling my friend, I'm going to prove to you how time works. Try and tell me what time it is right now. Because since we're in a dream state, in my opinion, from my perspective, there is no time. But he couldn't come up with a time. He couldn't tell me the time or a time. And I asked him maybe twice. I go, come on, tell me what time it is. And I'm ready. I can see my paper. I have my pencil. I'm ready for him to tell me something because I'm taking notes. So he doesn't want to deal with it. And he was in that dream experience because what he decided to do next was funny. He decided to wake up. He decided to leave the dream environment. So he actually just started shaking. And then I knew at that point, he woke up and he was gone. I knew he woke up and left. He literally left the environment. So then I'm like, okay, well, who's next? It was like a break room or a lunch room or something like that, where there was other people at other tables. So I go to these another couple guys and I go, how about you guys? You want to tell me what time it is? They didn't want anything to do with it either. And I forget what I did next. But I realized that nobody wanted to play. And so that was the end of I believe that was the end of my lucid dream experience. But it was so real. And the way other people act is the funny part about this, is the way these ladies are reacting to him. It's his lucid dream experience. They're in his dream. As my friend was in my dream, then he decided to wake up and leave, literally disappeared, vanished, woke up. But I know from where I was with him, we were in a sleep state with a sleep body. Our bodies were the sleep bodies, if you will. So we'll keep going. My eyes were wide open and I'm awake in my dream. As they passed by walking rapidly, I saw this ornate thing over my head. And I remembered a little visit a few months before in my friend's home near the hills of Hollywood, where he had a similar thing hanging from his wall. I remarked then, how does such a thing remain up? He said, if you look closely, you can see an almost invisible thread supporting it from the ceiling. Which I did. Excuse me. It was a beautiful cluster of leaves made of very thin copper. Well, this resembled that and reminded me of that. Again, because I saw this in my now waking dream, I said, now I know it's a dream because this is only a memory image of what I saw in my friend's home in the hills of Hollywood there 6 months ago. So it must be a dream. So he's realizing he's in a dream environment. Even though they're so real, and this is so real, and I'm so real, everything is so real, it is a dream. And so I did this. I held one of the leaves and I said to myself, come on, Neville, you know it's a dream. Wake up. Wake. He held one of the leaves. And I came to standing in that place, more awake than I am here now. It definitely feels like you're more awake. Having had the same exact experience, you feel more awake, just more hyper real. Now, being a father, then my little girl was in high school. She had to go through high school. Her desire was to go through college. And I said to myself, here, Vicky is unschooled and she must be educated. If I make my exit now, I leave a wife unprepared for this problem, and so I can't leave her. I can't leave here now. You see what's going on, right? He has woken up in that dream world, more real feeling than it is even being awake here now from the podium where he's telling the story. He realizes he doesn't have to go back. Neville realizes, wait, I might leave those, my loved ones, in the lurch if I just leave right now, which to them, his body would be no more. I mean, he wouldn't be in his body anymore. You know what that means. So he's doing the math. Wait a minute. My little girl wants to go to college, and none of this is taken care of yet. I have unfinished business in that world, for I am completely shut out in an entirely different world. So while standing there, I close my eyelids, and just as if I closed them here now, I wouldn't see you, so I didn't see the hallway. I opened my eyelids, and here is the hallway. I did it maybe a dozen times. He had to really bring the focus back. I am completely locked in this world, locked out in this world. I said to myself, they'll find the body tomorrow morning in Beverly Hills, and because of insurance policies, they'll have to cut it up and say, well, he died of this, that, or the other. But I still didn't want to terminate in this way. I wanted to get back, and this is what I did. Standing there, completely shut out in this other world, I simply imagined with the same intensity that brought me into that world, I imagined a pillow under my head. I stood there just simply feeling a pillow. That's all. Suddenly, while standing there, I could feel a pillow, and then to my great surprise, I'm not vertical. I'm horizontal, but I could feel myself on a pillow. But then I was cataleptic, and I couldn't move. I couldn't open my eyes. I went to the most enormous effort to open my eyes, and I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move a hand. I couldn't move a finger. I'm completely cataleptic. Then maybe 30, 45 seconds later, I could navigate the little finger. We had a double bed, so my wife slept on the other side. After a little while, I could move from the elbow, and I pushed it over, and I could feel that nice warm body of my wife, and I knew I'm back. A little while later, I could move the other hand. And then with a tremendous effort, I opened my physical eyelids and saw the familiar objects on the wall. So I tell you, when Blake said he didn't claim it was his always, now I, a fourfold vision, see, and a fourfold vision is given to me. 'Tis fourfold in my supreme delight, and threefold in soft Beulah's night, and twofold always. May God us keep from single vision and Newton's sleep. So when you only see a man, when you look at a man and he is no more than just a man, he's not a loving being or a hating being or a blood-sucking insect. He's none of these things, just a man. That's single vision. If a fire is a fire and it means nothing else, if a tree is a tree, nothing else, but not a thing becomes a symbol or image to you, then it's single vision. And may I tell you, the difference between fourfold vision and single vision is the difference between normal eyesight and blindness. One who was born blind, I don't mean going blind with memories of what you once observed while you had sight. I mean to be born blind, where no one in this world could convey to you what it means to look at red. If you're born blind and you never had the experience of the color red, there's no word, not a thing in this world that man could use to convey to you the sensation of red or blue or any other color. A form, yes. You can bring your hands and you can touch a form. And you can say, this is a symbol of that term. And then this is something different. And this is something different. And a bed and a chair and this and a cross and all the materials. But you haven't seen color. There's no word known by man that could convey to you the experience of color. Well, the difference between fourfold vision and single vision is the difference between normal eyesight and blindness from birth. So when one gets into it, I can't tell you the thrill. It's supreme delight. And you enter it, as I say, yes, dreaming or loving or imagining, three forms of the same thing, but with such intensity, and suddenly you are awake in the state you contemplate. I'm here to tell you, the color there he's describing is so far beyond. Even to my eyes right now, I'm looking around this room and it is so pastel. I just described a few videos ago of an out-of-body I had on the beach looking through the color in the waves. And I had a camera, I was there to take pictures of these waves. And the color was so beyond any color. I mean, we've had some pretty amazing sunsets over the last week. About a week and a half ago that were mind-boggling. The colors and the pink at night, sailor's delight, one night and then the next morning, because there's my west this way and there's my east this way. The one night before the morning, they were beautiful, but they still don't hardly compare to what he's describing. Even just what I saw only a few weeks ago. You're contemplating it and suddenly you are awake in it. And it takes on all the objective qualities that this room has now. That's fourfold vision. But for practical purposes in this world, we discuss and we try to encourage you to practice threefold vision. And threefold vision, like this little child, here's a child 3 years old. And now see the fireplace, so she sees it. Don't open your eyes, Pammy, because if you open your eyes, you aren't going to see it. And right away, you're going to come right down to one-fold vision. So a fireplace, do you see it? See the wall? Oh, yes. And lots of glass all around? Yes. And then over here, there's a room. It's your bedroom. And over here, there's another bedroom, and that's Julie's bedroom. You get it? And then out of nowhere, what seems like a disaster for his firm was being absorbed, and all the jobs are uncertain. So they're all given an aptitude test, including the father of this child. Who is the automaton of who? He comes out on the top, but not what he had been doing in the other job. He now must change jobs and become a salesman, which he doesn't want to do. Everybody knows salesman is the highest paying job there is. The income can be from anything from 0 to infinite number. But the aptitude test revealed he has all the qualifications for salesmanship, which he never thought of before. Now he becomes a salesman, and he's making a fortune. But now he becomes uneasy. He wants lovely things in this world, but very penurious. However, they buy the home of the child's dream, Pammy's dream. If you have any little kids around you, you might want to go ahead and implement this. Just play, be playful with them. Then comes Christmas. How to get out of him $5 to buy presents for my children. He, on the other hand, comes home with $100-odd worth of presents. And she, forgetting what she did, doesn't recognize her own harvest. Thought he's gone insane. She forgot. She forgot what she sowed with her daughter, Pammy. She thought her husband went insane. The grandma had to remind her. So when she called her mother and said, he's gone mad, he's contemplating buying a $100 playpen, and she said to her daughter, have you forgotten what you did with Pammy? Didn't you put Pammy into that lovely place where she actually played in the backyard with the playpen? Oh yes, I completely forgot it. Well, who did it? It's not his generosities. It's Pammy who did it. Pammy stirred him to go looking for the $100 pen because Pammy had played in it. It had to be there. All she did was move one time. She moved upon the face of the waters one time. Once. Now she takes all these images and she interplays them and marries them. And it produces a result, and she is the result. So I tell you, nothing is impossible to this wonder-working power. Christ is called in the Bible the power and the wisdom of God. You read it in the first chapter of Paul's letter to the Corinthians, the 24th verse, Christ, the power and wisdom of God. For God is all imagination, and his power is imagining. That's Christ. So Paul could say, having once thought of Christ as a man, he then said, from now on, I regard no one from the human point of view, even though I once regarded Christ from a human point of view, I regard him thus no longer. 2 Corinthians 5:16. He now sees who Christ is. Christ is the power and the wisdom of God, and the power and wisdom of God is imagining, as God is all imagination. And God became man that man may become God. So Blake said, man is all imagination, and God is man and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. So what are we doing here? We're nothing but imagination. We take it for so real. We take it for so real. What are all these things? And it was such a fun study in the Seth material because Seth broke it down in such a way where the understanding got to a level where as your consciousness moves through space, it isn't you that's partying through space. It's that you, the consciousness of you, is taking up the space as you move. That's the level of understanding we got to with the Seth classes I was teaching. When you start to see it from that perspective, you realize that you are the consciousness that is then occupying the space and creating with the space your image. So let's say you're moving across the room walking, your consciousness is owning each molecule as you move. So you're creating in that space you. How many times do you live and die? In each instant. If you're letting go of one image and creating the new image in the next millisecond as you're walking across a room, how many times do you live and die? Which is saying the same thing right out of the Bible, right out of Scripture. I kill and I make alive. As I move through space, I'm making that space my image. I kill the old image and I make alive the new image. The wonder-working power of us, I hope, it's my greatest hope that we reach this together, that we grasp a hold of this and we get into this new playground. Because that's all it really is. This is a new playground for us. Let's get in there and play. Let's get in there and have a good time. So much to unpack and peel open. Now, you may not with your concepts of Christ and your concepts of God accept it, but I suggest if there is evidence for a thing, what you think about it or even wish about it is nothing to the point. So this little girl and her mother remembered what she did and brings about this. And you may not relate her imaginal act to the fact, and you may say it would have happened anyway. That's your right to say that. But if she repeats it and she did, as she did, and you still insist in saying, well, it would have happened anyway, then the third time she does it, all in the interval of 2 years, and the parents realize exactly what they did. Now we come to the crux of the story of the child. As happens in the lives of all people, especially in California, why I do not know, but in California there are so many divorces. Anyone who is married for 10 years is the senior citizen. I don't know what it is about California. It's a more fantastic thing. If you remain united for more than 5, that's really an accomplishment. There must be something to this, because when we got together, we actually literally immediately got together and started a business out of state in Seattle. Operated it there for 2.5 years. Then there was a demand. We moved that to San Francisco, 2.5 more years. 5 years of this work out of state, but then 2.5 back in California. While in the Northwest, while in Seattle, we operate all over the Northwest, including Alaska. But there's something he's about to say, which is quite fascinating. But it's funny because we're 25 years in now, and I think we started elsewhere. It's just an idea, but let me see what he's going to say. Anyone who is married for more than 10 years is the senior citizen. It's a more fantastic thing. If you remain united for more than 5, that's really an accomplishment. Well, in spite of their 2 little girls, sweet children, they grew apart. He is Catholic, and he didn't want a divorce. He'd rather live in hell than have a divorce. But nevertheless, they got a divorce. The divorce was granted and finalized using the grandmother's story and her words, and her very words, using the word finalized. It was finalized 2 weeks ago. And she began, so she said to me, to lose faith, because she called me on this case when it began to develop a couple of months ago, say 3 months ago. And she said, I don't want them to be divorced. I'm quite sure they can reconcile, and the whole thing and become a loving, wonderful family, as they were and must be. So I agreed with her. Certainly they could be. Well, in spite of that agreement, here came a divorce and the papers signed and the whole thing finalized. So the grandmother said to the little girl, you want your mother back, don't you? And she began to cry. She said, all right, you know what you did with the house and the fireplace and the grass and the 2 bedrooms? Yes. You remember what you did with the playpen and all the toys? Yes. Well, now tonight, right now, you close your eyes and your mother is coming through the door. You hear the door open. She is coming in her nightgown, not in any suit, not in a dress where she's leaving this house tonight. She is coming here in her nightgown. She's sleeping here. So the door is opening and it's mother. She's coming over and she's kissing you. Feel the kiss. It's mother. And she's in her nightgown. She did it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and mother returned to that house on Friday. And mother is now back in the household in spite of a divorce decree that has been finalized. Maybe in the eyes of the priest they are living in sin, but there they are, parents of the 2 little girls, and mother came back just as the grandmother told her granddaughter that it would happen. And so when she met the grandmother, she said to the grandmother, you know, Grandma, you're mature, you're old, but with me, imagination works like thunder. For we are told in the Bible to never send a child away, for the child will lead us, in Isaiah. And a little child shall lead them, 11:6. A little child brings back the grandmother's faith, for she called me the teacher of this principle, and I agreed with her over the phone. Yes, reconciliation is perfect. Reconciliation is perfect. My teacher just corrected me 1,000 times on that word. I don't know why I want to say reconciliation when it's reconciliation, but there it is. So I heard her say yes, not devising the means toward the end, simply the end. Just the end. And then came what seems to be final and absolute, a signed decree of divorce. You can't go beyond that. Who says you can't go beyond that? Everything is possible to God. With God, nothing is impossible if you know who He is. God is your own wonderful human imagination. And God is action, and God in action is Christ. With God, nothing is impossible if you know who He is. God is your own wonderful human imagination, and God in action is Christ. Imagination in action is imagining. So what are you imagining? On a threefold vision or a single vision? A single vision is right here, and these are the facts of life. And I can do not a thing about it. So I perpetuate my world based upon the single vision. Forgive us, for we know not what we do. Then comes that moment in time, I get a double vision where things are not what they seem to be. They become similes. They become at first just a simile. I relate myself to the burning fire, knowing that as I began at a certain moment in time, it will come to an end just like the fire. So I am a simile. Then I say, life is a fire, a metaphor. Then I rub out the little is, and I say life and fire, blank space, are synonyms. And then I see it as a symbol. You know, the end of that video, a couple videos ago in the 63 chapters, the 1963 lectures, I think 1 or 2 videos ago, and I'm moving so fast, like at the end of it, we did a small imagining where we imagined our noble life and the end of that noble life. If you remember that video, what we were doing was an exercise in that twofold and threefold, maybe even fourfold vision right there. If you go back and revisit that, I think threefold. And then I see it as a symbol. I can't feel one without thinking of the other. Then I have images. I take it with everything in my world then. And so I think of people, and I saw them in my mind's eye spiritually, and they are all images. Then I begin to blend them, and I interplay the images. As I interplay them, they marry, and as they marry, they beget other images. And then I tested it. I would like to be, and I named it. I would like to be, say, elsewhere. Well, elsewhere is an image, and so I assume that I am elsewhere. Were I there, I would see people I couldn't see from this angle, and so were I there, I would have to see them, for they would be there. Then I began to see them in my mind's eye. Seeing them would imply that I am there, and so I began to talk with them, just as though I were there. And then I found that things rapidly change in my world to compel the journey. And I move across a series of events, some bridge of incident, and led me up to the fulfillment of that journey, and there I am. But then I remembered what I did. I took images, just simple images, and so interplayed and intermarried them that they produced another image. And the image was the fulfillment of my desire for myself, and I made the journey. So this is the threefold. He calls it soft Beulah's night. The thing nearest to heaven in Blake's terminology. First of all, he has eternity. He calls it Eden. and he likens it to the sun. The sun is the symbol. Then he had next to that soft Beulah's night. And the symbol of that was the moon, for the moon reflects the light of the sun. And this reflects the activity of heaven. Then he has the limit of it all. He had 5 worlds. The limit of it all he calls Ulro, U-L-R-O, Ulro. This world, for it was opaque, the light of contraction, and the limit of opacity, where man has single vision. Now, everyone in this world has single vision. But we are here for a purpose. This is for a divine reason that we are here. You and I didn't do a thing that was wrong to bring us here. We are here that we may be awakened as, what's the word? We are here that we may be awakened as God. Just like a chicken dropping an egg, and the egg contains the chicken, and by an effort from within, after germination, it comes out. The egg, giving birth to what it contains, is God coming out of this egg. And the egg here is the human skull. God actually comes out, and it's God. God became man, that man may become God. So here, the fall, spoken of in the Bible, is no more than the fall of the egg from the chicken. That's the full doctrine of the fall. And then the chicken rises from the broken egg. And it's God. And that's the end of the doctrine of evolution. So God became man, that man may become God. So I tell you, treat it seriously and become as the little child. This night when you go to bed, put yourself into the state of the wish fulfilled. And then blend all the images that would imply the fulfillment of that state. And live in it just as though it were true. How it will happen, I do not know. My teacher and I said it or she said it. She said it many more times than me, probably at least 75% more times than me. To enter unto heaven, you must enter unto as a child. We just had a lot of conversations, and a lot of times we were laughing. And in that laughter was always that phrase, because we were laughing at us and our worlds. And that phrase always came and it was showing itself. To enter into heaven, you must enter unto as a child. To enter into the kingdom of heaven, or you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, etc. However you want to say it. Another lovely story which I must tell you. If that wasn't the most amazing story you could ever get from Neville from the podium, and he was only updated right before he walked up to the podium. How does that man's mind work? I mean, all those details. And he never carried a piece of paper up there, I think one time. I remember hearing the lecture of him describing why he was holding that one piece of paper that one time, because he didn't want to mistake a piece of information that someone handed him, I think. I just heard that recently, but I digress. Another lovely story which I must tell you. For last Friday night, my wife came to the door and said, "Is there a gentleman in the room or a lady in the room who left a little dog in a car? Well, he is needed and she is needed." So the gentleman jumped right up and went out looking for the dog. He called me late that night and said he hadn't found the dog. He said, "I love the dog. I know it's my own negligence. I found the door open because I was so eager to get to the meeting without missing any part of it, that I did not close the window." Oh my gosh. He's in such a hurry to get in to see Neville. Oh, man. It was a little poodle. Not funny. I hope I know this has to have a good ending, but let's just go on. But can you imagine the enthusiasm and the drama and the effort to get in there, and Neville's already going to start. So he sought all over the neighborhood and he couldn't find the dog. He was up very late that night and called me. He said, "What must I do, Neville?" We all know what to do right now, don't we? So I told him what I would do if I were he. I would go to sleep just as though the dog were in the house. Feel the presence of the dog. And think only in terms of the nearness of the dog. It's right here. And so I'm able to tell you tonight, not the details. I don't have the details as yet. He has the dog. And so it never fails. Where you take your consciousness, you take your life. As I said, just walking through a room, you're taking your consciousness. Through the space, you're occupying new space every time you move. And in that space, you can put any consciousness you want. You tired of driving that 1986 Yugo? How plasticky, fragile? It's probably brittle by now. Your consciousness can change that because you're making that real every time you presuppose it's out there on the street. You make it real from your consciousness each time you think of it. That 1986 Yugo. Nothing against Yugoslavian-made cars, by the way. It's just this one particular model. If you're going to make that car, why not make a different car if you want a different car? Your consciousness is what's occupying the space, not the car. The car has nothing to do with it. The car is actually innocent in the story. You can put any car there. You can put any house around yourself. It's all just space occupied by your consciousness. Where you put your attention, you put your life. And so it never fails. We're going to move on. You know the meaning of the word prayer? Question mark. You're told in the 11th chapter and the 24th verse of the book of Mark, whatever you desire, when you pray, believe you've received it and you will. For the word prayer means, by definition in the biblical concordance, motion toward, ascension to, nearness at or in the vicinity of. Now you have a little dog and it's lost, and now you are living miles and miles away from where it jumped through the window. No, prayer means nearness to, motion toward, nearness at or in the vicinity of. If you found him, where would he be tonight? In a kennel? No. He'd be home, wouldn't he? Well, now that's praying. He's here at home. And you feel his presence at home. That's praying. You're feeling. That's the difference. For if he actually came back, if you found him, you wouldn't leave him behind. You wouldn't leave him behind you. He'd be at home. Therefore, you would actually bring him into your house. Now sleep as though you can touch him and feel him and smell him and feel his presence. Then go to sleep. Well, tonight I can tell you he is at home, and the owner of this little dog has learned a lesson not to leave the window open. So here, I invite you to join me in threefold vision. May I tell you, it will not fail you. No power in this world can stop it from working. For there's only God and there's nothing but God. God is reconciling, right? Reconciling the world to himself through Christ. And Christ is your own wonderful human imagining. That's Christ. Christ is the power and the wisdom of God. You don't need to be any wiser than you are. What would it be like were it true? And then you go to bed in the assumption that it is true and sleep in that assumption. Now, Friday night, a lady, I do not see her here tonight, but maybe she's here, but she gave me a letter Friday night. Pardon me, I now see her. But on Friday night, she gave me this perfectly wonderful letter, a true story. I told because she gave me permission to tell it. I told it last Sunday morning without using her name, without using the firm's name. So I didn't tell the first name or her name, but she's here tonight. 3 weeks ago, she and I were in the back room here where I speak. She wanted to see me before my meeting to discuss her problem. Her problem was the filling of a position in a fabulous company with resources in excess of $500 million. No lady had ever filled that position before. It was never considered that any woman could fill that position. There were many men eligible and ability to fill that job, but she wanted it. I simply said to her, were I you, I would just simply occupy it. Just as though it were true. So she occupied that job, and 3 weeks later, she was appointed to that job. Now she is a loan counselor in a corporation whose resources exceed $500 million. The first woman ever appointed to such an office. She is here tonight. I'm not going to ask her to identify herself, but someday maybe in this wonderful world of ours, you will be in need of her services. So she will tell you what I told her, and yet she can be of service to those who need her services. Wonderful. So here, join with me in putting into practice this threefold vision. It won't fail you. But may I tell you, you are the operant power. Knowing it is one thing and doing it is another. You either do it or you don't do it. If you do it, it will not fail. If you say you know it and then you are a good person, therefore God, because you are good, is going to take care of you, I have news for you. So let us go into the silence and put into practice this perfectly wonderful principle. Let us go into the silence right now and put into practice this wonderful principle. See yourself in your playground. It is a playground, whatever that playground is for you. See yourself on those toys, with those toys, on that grass, in that bedroom. Very good. As Neville would say, good. Question, inaudible. Of course. Answer. My dear, the difference between the fourfold vision and single vision is the simple difference between normal eyesight and blindness from birth. Normal eyesight, if it's a good 20/20 vision, sees objects just as they are. Colors are seen with the normal eyesight, except people who are colorblind. I mean a normal eyesight, not a colorblind person, one who sees objects just as they are presented. Now, a child born blind, but you could never convey to them the experience of color. But now a child born blind who has no organ of sight could get by in this world because they do, but you could never convey to them the experience of color. They could feel objects. Right now, we're having a few chairs recaned. We got them at Sloan's in New York City, and so we took them over here to Sloan's. They would be blank space, Sloan's, and they said, no, we can't do the job. We'll take the job because you bought them from us in New York City, but we give them out to the blind. And the blind we're speaking of here are the best workers on this job. They like recaning the chair. Well, they haven't been sent back, but they tell us there's no one better than the blind, for they can feel. Wow. And so undoubtedly, someone brings the regular cane to them, just what to do with it. But they can feel, and they're experts at putting it back in order so that they have it, that no one comes near the blind in recaning chairs. So they have our 2 chairs for recaning. Powerful. Question, inaudible. My dear, I'm just saying any person who dreams sees color, but you couldn't convey to them what you mean by color. A blind man who goes blind after he saw color, it would be easy for him to see color. But if you are born in this world, wrapped in this little garment of skin, without the organs of sight from birth, I'm not denying that you would still, in the depth of your soul, see color, but you would not relate it to anything the man is talking about concerning color. So the difference between fourfold vision and single vision is just as vast as the difference between normal sight, where all things are seen and observed, and one capable of observing anything. So when one awakes in a dream, and the dream is so real, until one has that experience, it's difficult to convey the thrill that is one's. So he said, fourfold vision is my supreme delight. You contemplate an image, and suddenly you are in the image, and the image takes on objective qualities, and everything in it becomes as solidly real as this, as you are. Everything. You are in an entirely different world. The day will come that you and I will be in a world completely different to our imaginative power. A world only of images that we will enter at will, and it will be all objectively real to us. Question, would you please explain a little bit about the fourfold vision? You're explaining you're being in this building and you're trying to get out and back because you had your little girl to put through school. Well, would that be considered what we call death, that you were in the state of? Good question. Did you hear the question? To go back to my experience of entering into an image and the image closing around me and becoming a blank space of this whole fabulous world. Had I not succeeded in returning, the world would tell them the garment that I now wear, identifying me with the garment that I wear, they would have said, Neville has died. I would not have died, but the garment would have been left behind, and they would have buried it after examining it for reasons why I should have died. It died, but I didn't, for I am the occupant of the garment, as you are the occupant of that garment. You never die, not in eternity, but you wear out garments. This is something that you must absorb. I think us who want to become conscious co-creators, you must absorb the idea that you aren't going anywhere. You aren't going anywhere. You're going to lay down new tracks that has the same pattern, or you're going to get off those tracks and go on to some new tracks. Either you're going to lay down the repeat tracks, is what I mean to say, and do the same thing again, or you're going to go into a new direction. But you're not going anywhere. You're not going to disappear. You're not going into the void, to nothing. I have friends that tell me that they think that that's what death is, and I'm just like, oh my. I mean, such a negative outlook that this is all just a race to get to some end where it's just blank. I've tried over many decades to change the course of those thoughts in certain friends, whom I love. I have friends. It's okay for us to have a different philosophy, but it is a fascinating one. It died, but I didn't, for I am the occupant of the garment, as you are the occupant of that garment. You never die, not in eternity, but you wear out garments. And this garment would have been, by my adventurous nature, have been declared dead. But I do not die, but I had unfinished business here. I had a wife that I could not, in my own mind's eye, unsure of Caesar's law. I had not seen my little girl was properly educated, and she had the talent and the desire for higher education, so I had not completed that or left behind me the means for its completion. So my desire then allowed me to experiment, and I did it with touching. I discovered the sense of touch. Is so important. And so by feeling the sensation of a pillow, I came back, for there's no man that moves that would have led me back here. So there's no road from that world to this world, and touch brought me back. So I emphasize the sense of feeling the sense of touch. If I could tell any person who was desirous of being happily married, and it's a lady I'm addressing, would you wear a ring? Yes? Question mark? Well, then feel the ring. Don't feel a huge big nugget there. That doesn't mean that you're married. That precedes marriage, and it's no proof that you're married. But a simple gold wedding band there would imply to the rest of the world that you're married. And then put the mood with that you're happily married, that you're proud of the one whose name you bear. Although you do not know the name, just feel how proud you are of it, and thrilled and clean and wholesome in this relationship. And touch it. Go to bed feeling the ring. The one thing that would imply the fulfillment of the state known. So touch to me is so very important because I've proved it. I'm here to tell you, every time you're involved in any imagining lovingly of any sort, you must involve touch. You have to. If you want to complete the actual vision and the imagining, touch is necessary. I often high five. I often do hugging. There's always touch involved. Very, very important point. Neville came back to us by the sense of touch. Thankfully. Didn't work out later after the martini he had with Frank Carter, but that's okay. He knew he was ready to go. Well, question. Neville, you equated the activity of dreaming and loving and imagining. Could you elaborate on that just a little? Answer. Well, first of all, one cannot dream. In tonight's dream, I take the object of today into the day and rearrange the living pattern based upon my fears and my hopes. So my hope and my fear of this day will produce my dream of tonight. But I use the images familiar to me, and there I weave them into this living structure. Well, note the very word imagining implies using energy. And so to be loving, there must be an object. You can't just love unless there's an object of one's love. And so that's an image. And so I use the word dreaming. Dreaming is simply imagining. Imagining is dreaming. And then dreaming is simply imagining. So I use the three terms. And I say they are only three forms of the same thing. Dreaming, loving, imagining. But now when I sit down to imagine a state by becoming blank space, but really absorbed in what I am imagining, I tend to step into the state imagined. If I should succeed in making my consciousness follow my vision and step into it, it closes upon me. Then the whole world is just as real as this, as solidly real as this. And I'm speaking from experience. I am not theorizing. Powerful instructions. There's a lot in this one lecture, man. I'm here to tell you. I mean a lot. You can pretty much have anything you want in this life from this one lecture. This one lecture. Named, I don't know how many pages it goes back. Wonder working power of attachment. We have one more question. Question. Inaudible. Blank space, fourfold vision. Then threefold vision, like the little child. Roosevelt went into office when we were in the deep of depression and he couldn't stand on his own feet. We couldn't stand on our feet and we wanted support from our government, so we voted into office one who couldn't stand on his own feet and had to be lifted up. You can see it's all symbol. Everything's symbols. Look at the way he just broke that down. Every time he stood, he had to be supported by someone other than himself. So he gave us the WPA, the CCC, and the blank space, and all these supports outside. But this is a symbol. I am not now criticizing anyone that you and I vote into office, That's the highest office in the world of Caesar. I can't conceive of any political office higher than our office as president in this country. There's nothing compared to that when it comes to a political office. But don't let me, because of the greatness of the position, become blind to the symbols in this world. Every man is a symbol. Every great man's life is an allegory. Every great man's life is an allegory. And so when we brought him into office and repeated it for 4 times, we were in need of external power. We didn't stand on our own feet. We had a deep depression until the war broke in 1941. We still had a fabulous unemployment. Not a thing was done to relieve that, in spite of all the years and all the millions that they used, the entire alphabet, trying to get things moving. Now comes this present chap, and undoubtedly he's been doing, personally, you would love him, no question about it. He's a brilliant, brilliant fella, a lovable fella, a wealthy fella. But what got me, knowing the symbols of the world, the minute he gets to office, he gets into a rocking chair. Well, no more of that. Good night. Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness, that lecture is profound. You could be digging nuggets of gold out of this one for a long time. I am wowed. I am wowed. Blake is in here. Neville throwing it down. I don't even know how many pages that was. Page 261 to 275. Good golly, 14 pages at least. Wow. Incredible. Just go into the silence. After this, go into your silence. Use the twofold, threefold, fourfold vision. Just use the little girl's example. Just go into the yard, and what is in the yard? What's in the other bedroom? Travel there by keeping your eyes closed. Stay put. Don't open your eyes. You can do this with your spouse. They can close their eyes. You can have them imagine. Your spouse can do it with you. You can close your eyes. They can tell you which room to go into, what car's in the driveway. Go out there, start that car. Anything is possible. And all of it's probable. Probable means they're already done. Oh, man. Wonderful. Wonderful lecture. Okay. Take a big breath after that one. Go into your closet. Shut the door. All right, we're going to see you in the next one.